Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Fluent English journey. I am Ava. There are moments in life when everything looks fine from the outside, yet inside, you feel empty. You smile at people, you say, "I'm fine," but deep down, something feels missing. That's exactly how Daniel felt. He was 28, living in a big city, working at a well-known company, and doing everything that, on paper, looked successful. But success without peace feels like noise. And Daniel's life was full of noise. Every morning, his alarm screamed at 6:30. He jumped out of bed, checked his phone before even brushing his teeth, and scrolled through social media. There were pictures of people traveling, laughing, buying new things, achieving new goals. It always looked like everyone else was doing better. And as he looked at those pictures, a quiet voice in his mind whispered, "Why are you not happy?" The truth was, Daniel had forgotten how to feel grateful. He had stopped noticing the small things: the smell of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight touched his desk, the friendly smile of the old security guard downstairs. He was too busy rushing, too busy comparing, too busy chasing what he didn't have. He used to think, "When I finally get that promotion, I'll be happy." Then the promotion came, but happiness didn't stay. He bought a new phone. Happiness lasted for one day. He moved into a better apartment. Happiness lasted for 1 week. Everything he achieved faded faster each time. His life had become a race with no finish line. One Friday evening, as he walked home from work, the city felt unusually quiet. It was raining softly. He didn't take an umbrella, so the rain touched his face and shirt. The air smelled fresh, but he didn't notice. His mind was somewhere else, thinking about unfinished emails, bills to pay, and the same question again: what am I even doing? When he reached his apartment, he turned on the lights and looked around. Everything looked neat: a big TV, a leather sofa, a modern kitchen. Yet the silence of the room felt heavier than noise. He threw his bag on the floor and sat on the couch. For a few seconds, he just stared at the wall. Then, without planning, he said softly, "I don't feel anything anymore." It was the first time he had said it out loud. And sometimes, saying the truth is where change begins. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. His thoughts kept running in circles. He remembered the times when he used to laugh easily, when life felt simpler, when gratitude was natural. He remembered being a teenager, excited about everything. Back then, even small things like finding coins on the ground or getting an unexpected text from a friend made him smile. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing life that way. He opened his laptop and searched on YouTube, "How to Feel Grateful Again." Hundreds of videos appeared: motivational talks, meditation guides, podcasts. He clicked on one with a calm voice that said, "Gratitude is not something you find. It's something you practice." Those words stayed in his head. Something you practice. He realized he had been waiting for gratitude to appear by itself, like magic. But maybe gratitude wasn't a result. Maybe it was a skill, like speaking a new language or learning to play an instrument. You have to practice it to feel it. The next morning, Daniel woke up early. It was Saturday. No meetings, no rush. He sat by the window with his cup of coffee, and for a moment, he tried to notice things: the sound of birds, the light in the room, the warmth of the mug in his hands. He didn't feel a big emotional change, but it felt calm. Maybe that was a start. He decided to begin something new, a small challenge just for himself. He called it the Gratitude Project. He would write down 3 things he was grateful for every day, no matter how small. He didn't tell anyone. It was just between him and his notebook. That first day, he wrote, "Coffee that tastes good. The sound of rain last night. My warm bed." It looked simple, almost too simple. But something inside him felt a tiny spark, like he had found a door he didn't know existed. The next few days were ordinary, but slightly different. Monday morning still came with its usual rush: emails, deadlines, meetings, but Daniel tried to keep his gratitude notebook with him. During lunch, instead of scrolling through his phone, he wrote 3 more things. A friendly message from an old friend. The smile of the girl at the coffee shop. The funny joke his colleague made. At first, it felt strange. His brain still wanted to complain. It kept saying, "You're tired. You're busy. You don't have time for this." But he kept writing. Then, something small but important happened on Thursday. Daniel was on his way to work, running late as usual. He rushed into the subway station, half asleep, holding his coffee. The train was crowded. Everyone was looking at their phones. But when he stepped in, an older woman smiled and said, "You dropped your wallet." He quickly turned and saw his wallet on the floor. He picked it up and said, "Oh, thank you so much." The woman smiled and said, "No problem, dear. We all need to help each other sometimes." That one sentence stayed with him the whole day. We all need to help each other sometimes. When he came home that evening, he added it to his gratitude list. But this time, it wasn't just words. He really felt thankful. For the first time in months, he felt something deep, like the world had noticed him, and he had noticed the world. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, Daniel's perspective began to change. He still had problems: work stress, bills, noise, but now small moments started to shine through. Gratitude didn't remove his struggles, but it gave him new eyes to see them. He started to smile more at people. He began saying thank you not just as a habit, but with meaning. He noticed how different it felt when gratitude came from the heart. Sometimes, even saying thank you to a stranger felt like giving light. But one evening, something tested him, a reminder that gratitude is not always easy. He had worked all day on an important report. He stayed late in the office, skipped lunch, and finally sent the report to his boss. The next morning, he received an email. "This is not what I asked for. Please redo it." All the energy in his body collapsed. He felt angry, frustrated, tired. He thought, what's the point of gratitude now? He wanted to complain, to give up on his little project. But that night, while sitting on the balcony, he looked up at the sky. The city lights were bright, but he could still see a few stars. He took a deep breath and said to himself, maybe gratitude is not about perfect days. Maybe it's about finding something good, even when everything goes wrong. He opened his notebook again and wrote, "I have a job, even if it's hard. I'm learning patience. The stars are still shining." That night, he didn't feel defeated anymore. He felt human and alive. Sometimes, the smallest moments carry the biggest lessons. Daniel was learning that gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about seeing the light even when the sky is cloudy. And as he closed his notebook that night, something inside him whispered, "You're beginning to see." Sometimes, life tests us right after we decide to change. It's as if the universe wants to ask, "Are you sure?" For Daniel, that question came sooner than he expected. It was a Wednesday morning in late October. The weather was cold and gray, and the city wore its usual mask of hurry. Daniel was at work, sipping coffee, preparing for his weekly meeting. He felt calm, more focused than usual. His little gratitude notebook was in his bag, and he had written that morning. Warm coffee, a cozy sweater, a new day to begin again. He smiled a little as he read it. He was beginning to enjoy this simple morning habit. But that peace didn't last long. At 10:15 a.m., Daniel's phone rang. It was his younger sister, Anna. She never called during work hours. He answered quietly, "Hey, Anna, what's up?" Her voice was shaky. "Dan, are you sitting?" Those words immediately made his heart beat faster. "What happened?" he asked. "It's Dad," she said softly. "He's in the hospital." "It's his heart." The world around Daniel suddenly slowed down. He couldn't hear the noise of the office anymore. His mind froze on one word, Dad. He left his desk without saying anything, walked outside, and called her again. Tell me everything, he said. Anna explained that their father had collapsed while working in the garden. The ambulance came quickly, and now he was stable, but the doctors wanted to keep him under observation. Daniel felt a mix of fear and guilt. His father lived 2 hours away, and Daniel hadn't visited him for months. Work, meetings, and city life always seemed more important. I'll be there soon, he said. He packed his bag, took the first train out of the city, and stared out the window as the landscape moved past him. The sky looked heavy, as if it carried his thoughts. In that moment, gratitude felt far away. Fear had taken its place. When he arrived at the hospital, Anna was waiting near the entrance. Her eyes were tired but calm. He's okay for now, she said. They're running some tests. Daniel followed her to the room. His father was lying in bed, connected to wires and machines. Seeing him like that felt strange. This was the man who used to lift him on his shoulders, who always looked strong, who used to fix everything around the house. Now he looked small and fragile. Hey, Dad, Daniel said softly. His father opened his eyes slowly and smiled. You didn't have to come from the city, he whispered. Daniel laughed nervously. Of course I did. Don't worry, his father said. I'm fine. Just the old engine complaining a bit. Even in that situation, his father tried to make a joke. Daniel felt tears burning behind his eyes. He wanted to say so many things. I'm sorry for not visiting. I miss you. I love you. But the words got stuck in his throat. So instead, he just sat there, holding his father's hand in silence. Sometimes silence says what words cannot. That evening, after his father fell asleep, Daniel went to the hospital cafeteria. He sat with a cup of tea and opened his notebook. His hand hesitated. What could he possibly be grateful for now? His heart felt heavy, and gratitude seemed like a distant idea. But then he remembered the words from that YouTube video. Gratitude is something you practice. He took a deep breath and wrote slowly. My father is alive. The doctors were quick. I got here in time. He didn't feel joyful, but he felt grounded. Gratitude, he realized, wasn't only for the good days. It was a light you carry through the dark ones. The next few days passed in a blur of hospital visits, test results, and waiting. Daniel stayed with Anna at their childhood home. Every morning, he went for a short walk near the park they used to play in as kids. The autumn air was crisp and the trees were turning golden. On one of those mornings, an old man was feeding birds by the pond. Daniel watched as dozens of pigeons gathered around him. The man smiled and said, They come every day. They know I'll be here. Daniel smiled back. You never miss a day? The old man shook his head. No. It keeps me thankful. They remind me that life still responds to kindness. Those words stayed in Daniel's heart. Life still responds to kindness. Maybe gratitude and kindness were connected. Maybe when you're grateful, you naturally want to give. That evening, he visited his father again. The doctors said he would recover, but he needed rest and a few changes in lifestyle. Daniel promised to help him with everything. I'll visit more often, he said. His father smiled. That's all I need to hear. On his way back home that night, Daniel stopped by a small shop to buy groceries. As he waited in line, an elderly woman in front of him was counting coins, trying to pay for her items. She was short a few dollars. The cashier looked impatient. Without thinking, Daniel said, It's okay, I'll cover it. The woman looked surprised. Oh no, you don't have to. Daniel smiled. Please, it's nothing. Her eyes softened. Thank you, young man. That's very kind of you. As he walked home, Daniel felt lighter than he had in days. Gratitude was not only about noticing blessings, it was also about becoming one. Back in the city, life slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But Daniel wasn't the same. Something inside him had shifted. He no longer rushed through mornings. He took a few extra minutes to sit quietly before work, sometimes writing, sometimes just breathing. He noticed how even ordinary days had beauty, the way sunlight reflected on a window, the smell of bread from the bakery downstairs, the laughter of children walking to school. His coworkers noticed the change too. "You seem calmer these days," one of them said during lunch. Daniel smiled. "Yeah, maybe I'm just trying to appreciate things more." But not everyone understood. One of his close friends, Ryan, laughed and said, "Man, you're turning into a philosopher. Next thing you'll be meditating on office emails." Daniel laughed too, but inside, he knew that something real was happening. He didn't need others to understand. Gratitude was his private revolution. Then one day, the biggest test came. It was a cold Monday morning. Daniel walked into the office as usual, feeling focused and ready. But when he reached his desk, his manager called him into a meeting. The company had lost a major client. Budgets were being cut. They had to let some people go. Daniel's name was on that list. He sat there in silence, listening to his manager's careful words. "It's not about your performance," she said. "You've been great. It's just business." Business. Such a small word for such a big impact. As he packed his things into a box, his mind went blank. He wasn't angry, just numb. He took the elevator down, walked out of the building, and stood on the street. The world kept moving, cars, people, noise, but inside him, everything felt still. He walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. For a long time, he said nothing. His hands were cold. His thoughts were heavy. And then, out of habit, he reached into his bag and pulled out his gratitude notebook. It felt strange to open it at that moment. Gratitude seemed impossible. But he had made himself a promise, something you practice. So he took a breath and he wrote, "I'm healthy. I have time to rest and rethink. The sky is still beautiful today." As he finished the third line, a soft wind blew through the park, carrying yellow leaves around his feet. And for the first time, Daniel didn't feel afraid of the unknown. He felt curious. Maybe this was not an ending, but a beginning. He looked up and whispered, "Thank you even for this." It wasn't easy to say, but it felt right. That evening, Daniel called his father. "Hey, Dad," he said, trying to sound calm. "I lost my job today." There was a short silence. Then his father said, "I'm sorry, son. But maybe this is a good thing." Daniel frowned. "A good thing?" His father chuckled softly. "You've been running too fast for too long. Maybe life is giving you time to slow down and see what really matters." Daniel smiled, tears forming in his eyes. "Maybe you're right." They talked for a long time. When he hung up, Daniel realized that even in loss, there was connection, and that connection itself was something to be grateful for. As he sat by the window that night, watching the lights of the city, Daniel felt something new. Gratitude wasn't just a practice anymore. It had become part of him, a quiet strength that stayed even when life shook him. He wrote one more line in his notebook before sleeping. "Today I learned that gratitude doesn't wait for good times. It creates them." It's strange how endings often carry the seeds of new beginnings. Losing his job could have broken Daniel completely, and maybe, in the past, it would have. But now, something was different. Gratitude had quietly built a small strength inside him, like a candle that still burns even in the wind. The first few days after leaving his job were slow and silent. He didn't set an alarm anymore. He woke up naturally to the sound of birds outside his window. At first, it felt strange not to rush. But then, that strangeness turned into peace. He made coffee, opened his window, and just breathed. He realized something. For years, He had lived his mornings for work. Now he was living them for himself. He kept his gratitude notebook close. Every day, he wrote at least 3 things, sometimes more. One morning he wrote, "Fresh air and free time. Talking to Dad on the phone. The courage to start over." Another day he wrote, "The quiet sound of rain. My sister's laughter on a video call. Hope, even when I don't see the whole path." These small lists became his morning ritual, like stretching his mind before the day began. And slowly, gratitude began to change the way he saw everything. A week later, Daniel decided to take a walk through the park near his apartment. It was a bright morning, full of sunshine and energy. Children were playing, dogs were running, and the world seemed alive again. As he walked past a small outdoor cafe, he noticed a group of people sitting together with notebooks and laptops. They were laughing, sharing ideas, sketching things on paper. A small sign on the table read, "Community Creative Group. Everyone welcome." Daniel stopped for a moment. He wasn't sure why, but something about it caught his attention. He had always liked writing and drawing when he was younger, but he hadn't done either in years. Work had consumed all his creativity. He stood there, watching, until one of the group members noticed him and waved. "Hey, you can join us if you like. We're just sharing ideas and stories." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Sure, why not?" He ordered a coffee and sat down. The group introduced themselves: writers, designers, teachers, and students. They met every Saturday to talk about creative projects and life lessons. The energy was open and friendly, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt he belonged somewhere new. When it was his turn to share, he said, "Honestly, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I just lost my job, and I'm trying to figure out what's next." A woman with curly hair smiled. "Then you're in the right place," she said. "Sometimes losing something is how you make space for something better." Her name was Mia. She was a freelance writer who believed that storytelling could heal people. As they talked, Daniel told her about his gratitude project, the notebook, the daily lists, the lessons he was learning. Mia listened carefully and said, "That's beautiful. You should write about it. People need that kind of story." Daniel laughed softly. "Me? I'm not really a writer." "Everyone's a writer when they have something true to say," Mia replied. Those words stayed in his heart. Over the next few weeks, Daniel kept meeting with the group. He started writing short reflections about gratitude, small paragraphs about what he noticed each day. He didn't plan to publish them, but the act of writing helped him express his thoughts in English more clearly. Sometimes he read them aloud to the group, practicing how to speak slowly and with feeling. One day, Mia said, "You know, the way you talk about gratitude, it's very peaceful. You make it sound alive. You could even start a podcast or a YouTube channel. People would love that calm, honest tone." Daniel smiled shyly. "I don't think I have the voice for that." "You don't need a perfect voice," she said. "You just need a real one." Her confidence in him felt like a spark. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about it. A YouTube channel about gratitude and life lessons. Maybe that was something he could try. Something new. He opened his laptop, created a folder called Project New Start, and began writing ideas for his first video. Titles like Finding Calm in Chaos, How Gratitude Changes Perspective, and Lessons from Everyday Life. He didn't know if anyone would listen, but he was excited again. That feeling of purpose, which he had lost months ago, was slowly returning. Meanwhile, his father was recovering well. They spoke often, and every conversation was filled with warmth. One evening, his father said, "You sound happy, son. What's going on?" Daniel laughed. "I don't know. Maybe I'm finally learning how to live slower." His father chuckled. "That's the secret no one teaches. Gratitude turns what you have into enough." Those words touched Daniel deeply. Gratitude turns what you have into enough. He wrote it down immediately in his notebook. Weeks passed, and Daniel began recording his first YouTube video using his phone and a simple microphone. His hands were shaking, but he smiled and said softly into the mic, "Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I used to think success meant being busy, earning more, and always chasing the next goal. But lately, I've learned something different, that happiness doesn't come from what we get, but from what we notice. Gratitude changed my life. Maybe it can change yours too." He paused, took a deep breath, and continued. "This channel is my small project, a place to talk about everyday gratitude, even when life is messy. Because gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about finding light in small places. If you're listening, thank you. You being here means something." When he finished recording, he didn't expect much. But the next morning, when he checked his channel, there were already 300 views and several comments. One said, "This made my morning calm." Another said, "Your voice helped me feel hopeful today." A third said, "Thank you for reminding me that small things matter." Daniel couldn't believe it. He smiled, realizing that his little gratitude project had now become a bridge to others. He wasn't just practicing gratitude anymore, he was sharing it. That night, he sat by his window again, holding his notebook. The city lights glowed softly outside. He wrote, "A second chance to create. People who listen and connect. The courage to share my story." He closed the notebook and whispered, "Thank you, life, for giving me more than I asked for." As weeks turned into months, the YouTube channel slowly grew. He kept posting every week, short, calm stories about gratitude, kindness, and mindfulness. He spoke slowly, clearly, using simple English so anyone around the world could follow. People began commenting from different countries, Japan, Brazil, India, and Spain. They said his voice helped them learn English while feeling inspired. One message stood out. It said, "I listen to your stories every night before sleeping. They remind me that I'm not alone." That message made Daniel emotional. He realized that his pain had found a purpose. Losing his job wasn't a punishment, it was an invitation to do something meaningful. One Saturday, during the creative group's meeting, Mia smiled and said, "You've changed so much, Daniel. Do you notice it?" He laughed. "A little. I think gratitude rewired my brain." "It did more than that," she said. "It opened your heart." They walked through the park after the meeting. The trees were full of life again, spring returning after a long winter. Daniel looked at the flowers blooming and said, "You know, I used to walk past this park every day and never notice how beautiful it was." Mia smiled. That's the magic of awareness. When you're grateful, you start to see what was always there. They walked in silence for a while, both smiling. Later that evening, Daniel called his sister. She was happy to hear about his channel. "I'm proud of you, Dan," she said. "You sound like someone who found his peace." He laughed softly. "Maybe. I'm still learning, though. Gratitude is like a muscle, you have to keep using it." She replied, "Then you must be getting pretty strong." They both laughed, and Daniel realized something simple but powerful. Connection itself was gratitude. Every time he said thank you, every time he shared kindness, he was building invisible threads that connected his life to others. That night, Daniel wrote a reflection that later became one of his most popular videos. He said, "Gratitude is not only about saying thank you for what you have. It's also about trusting that what you don't have yet will come when it's meant to." Gratitude turns waiting into peace, challenges into lessons, and ordinary days into blessings. When he posted it, thousands of people shared it. His story had become a mirror for others, proof that even when life falls apart, it can rebuild you in beautiful ways. 1 year later, Daniel's life looked completely different. He wasn't in a corporate office anymore. He was now a full-time content creator, speaking to people all over the world about gratitude, peace, and positive living. He still lived in the same small apartment, but now it felt like home, filled with plants, books, and the sound of calm music. One evening, he found his old notebook, the very first one where he wrote, "Coffee that tastes good," and "the sound of rain." He smiled and ran his fingers over the pages. So many moments, so many lessons. He whispered, "This book changed everything." Then he looked at the camera, recording his latest video, and said with a warm smile, "Gratitude doesn't change your situation immediately, but it changes you. And when you change, everything around you slowly follows." Months had passed since Daniel began his gratitude journey. His YouTube channel was growing. His messages were spreading hope. People called him the calm voice that helps you breathe again. But behind the calm, Daniel knew something still remained unfinished. There were moments, especially at night, when silence brought back old memories, the things he hadn't yet faced. He would sit by his window, the same spot where everything had started, and feel a quiet ache in his chest. He had learned to be grateful for his present, but his past still felt heavy. One night, while replying to YouTube comments, Daniel came across one that stopped him. It said, "I love your stories. But how do you forgive yourself for the mistakes you can't forget?" Daniel read it again and again. The words felt like they were written for him. He realized that even though he had forgiven others, he had never truly forgiven himself for the times he was careless, impatient, or disconnected from the people who loved him, especially his mother. Daniel's mother had passed away 5 years earlier. She had been kind, patient, and full of quiet wisdom. She always told him, "Don't just count your blessings, Daniel. Use them to bless others." But back then, Daniel had been too busy chasing his career. He used to say, "I'll visit you next weekend, Mom. I just have a big project right now." Next weekend often turned into next month. And then, one day, time ran out. She was gone before he could say goodbye. He had buried that guilt deep inside, thinking that staying busy would help him forget. But gratitude had made him still enough to feel, and now all those emotions were rising again. That night, Daniel closed his eyes and whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." The words felt small, but they were real. He realized that gratitude without forgiveness was like sunlight through a dirty window, bright but unclear. The next day, Daniel decided to visit his childhood home for the first time in years. He took a small notebook and a single white rose. The road felt both familiar and foreign, like walking through a dream you half remember. When he reached the old house, it was quiet. The garden was overgrown, the paint faded. But as he stepped inside, memories flooded back, the smell of cinnamon, the sound of his mother humming while cooking, the laughter that used to fill every corner. He sat in her old chair, opened his notebook, and began to write. "Dear Mom, I used to think gratitude was about saying thank you for what I have. But now I see it's also about saying thank you for what I had, even if I didn't realize how precious it was at the time. I didn't say it enough when you were here. But I'm saying it now. Thank you for teaching me kindness. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for every meal, every hug, every gentle word I took for granted. I love you. I always did. I just didn't say it enough." He placed the white rose beside her photograph on the shelf and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom." In that moment, something inside him broke, but in the most beautiful way. He cried, not out of pain, but release. The kind of tears that wash away years of guilt and open space for peace. For the first time, Daniel felt completely light. That evening, as he walked back through the park, he noticed the sunset painting the sky in gold and pink. He stopped, took a deep breath, and smiled. He realized this was healing. Not forgetting, not escaping, but transforming pain into gratitude. He whispered softly, "Thank you, life, even for the lessons that hurt." The next morning, Daniel decided to share this experience with his audience. He sat in front of his camera, looked straight into the lens, and spoke from his heart. Today's message is different. It's not about gratitude for what's easy. It's about gratitude for what's difficult. The truth is, I lost my mother before I learned how to say thank you properly. For years, I carried guilt and silence. But recently, I realized something: forgiveness is also a form of gratitude. When you forgive yourself, you honor the people who loved you anyway. When you let go, you make space for peace to return. Gratitude is not only saying thank you for the good things, it's whispering thank you even for the storms that shaped you. He paused, his voice trembling slightly. If you're listening right now and there's something you still hold inside, a regret, a wound, a goodbye you never said, maybe today's the day to let it go. Write a letter. Speak to them in your heart. Don't wait for the perfect moment. The healing begins when you begin. He ended the video quietly with one final sentence: "Peace begins where gratitude meets forgiveness." The video went viral. Comments poured in from all over the world. I cried while listening. I needed this. I lost my father last year. Thank you for helping me heal. Your words made me forgive myself for something I've carried for years. Daniel read each message with tears in his eyes. He realized that sharing his pain had helped others release theirs. That was the power of honesty. It connected souls. Over time, Daniel's videos became more than just lessons. They became spaces for healing. People from around the world wrote letters to their loved ones, just like Daniel did. Some said thank you, some said sorry, and some just said goodbye. But all of them felt lighter. Daniel began calling this project the Gratitude Circle. Every week, he invited viewers to write one letter, to someone or to themselves, and share what they learned. Thousands joined. The comments section became a sea of kindness, empathy, and understanding. Daniel often said, "The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more grateful ones." One quiet evening, after finishing his recording, Daniel went for a walk again. The air was cool, the stars clear. He found a small bench under a tree, the same one where he had first met Mia and the creative group. He sat there, smiling at how far he had come. No job title, no corporate badge, no competition, yet he had never felt richer. He finally understood something that his old life could never teach him. Gratitude doesn't change your past. It changes the meaning of your past. When you see your pain through the eyes of gratitude, it becomes wisdom. When you see your mistakes through kindness, they become teachers. And when you see your losses through love, they become part of your strength. Daniel looked up at the sky and whispered one last quiet thank you, not just for what he had gained, but for everything that had once felt like loss. That night, he wrote in his final notebook page, "True gratitude begins when you no longer ask life, 'Why me?' but instead whisper, 'Thank you for choosing me to learn this.'" Gratitude doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. And healing is simply the heart remembering that it is whole. He closed the notebook gently and smiled. Tomorrow would bring another sunrise, another chance to begin again. The morning sun touched Daniel's face softly through the curtains. It was one of those mornings where everything felt calm, not because life was perfect, but because he was. He made his coffee slowly, listening to the sound of the kettle. It was the same sound he had heard every morning for years, but this time it felt sacred. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you," just as he always did now. Gratitude had become part of him, not a practice, not a list, but a way of seeing. It was no longer something he had to remember to do. It was how he breathed, how he walked, how he lived. After months of sharing his stories online, Daniel's channel, Fluent English Journey, had reached thousands of people around the world. Every week, he received messages from viewers saying how his calm voice helped them find hope, how they listened every morning before work or before bed when their thoughts were too loud. One message said, "Your stories don't just teach English, they teach peace." That line made Daniel smile. It reminded him of what his mother used to say, "Use your blessings to bless others." And now, that's exactly what he was doing. One afternoon, Daniel received an email that would change everything. It was from an international conference called Voices of Change, an event where speakers from around the world shared stories of resilience, gratitude, and personal growth. The organizer wrote, "We've seen your videos, Daniel. Your message about gratitude has touched many. We'd love for you to speak at our upcoming conference in Singapore in front of 5,000 people." Daniel froze. His first thought was disbelief. Me? Speaking on a world stage? Just a year ago, he was sitting alone in his apartment, lost in noise, feeling like nothing mattered. And now life was offering him a microphone to share the very lesson that had saved him. He closed his eyes and said softly, "Thank you." The weeks leading up to the conference were exciting but nerve-wracking. Daniel hadn't spoken in front of such a large audience before. He practiced every day, not just his English words, but his calmness, his rhythm, his heart. He told himself, "This isn't about me. It's about the message. I'm just the voice." He decided not to prepare a perfect script. Instead, he wanted to speak like he always did on his YouTube channel, naturally, simply, and from the heart. The day of the conference arrived. The hall was grand, filled with lights, cameras, and faces from all over the world. Daniel stood backstage, holding his mother's small silver pendant in his hand, the one she used to wear. He whispered, "Walk with me, Mom." When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage. For a moment, the bright lights blinded him. He took a deep breath and looked at the sea of faces before him. Then, with his calm voice, he began. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I used to think gratitude was about saying thank you for the good things. But life taught me something different. Gratitude is also about saying thank you for the difficult things, the lessons, the heartbreaks, the mistakes, because they shape who we become." He paused, looked around, and continued. "A few years ago, I was living a fast life, full of work, full of stress, full of noise. From the outside, I looked successful. But inside, I felt empty. I was chasing happiness like it was something outside of me. Until one day, life stopped me and asked me to listen. I lost my mother, and with her, I lost direction. But in that silence, I learned something that changed everything. Gratitude is not a destination. It's a way of traveling." The audience grew still. You could feel the room breathing with him. "I started a small project called the Gratitude Circle. Every week, I wrote down 3 simple things I was thankful for: a good cup of coffee, a smile from a stranger, the sound of rain. And slowly, those small things began to heal big parts of me. Gratitude didn't change my life overnight, it changed how I saw life. And that changed everything." Daniel smiled gently and said, "If you're listening to me right now and you feel tired or lost or ungrateful, I understand. I've been there. But I want you to know this. Peace doesn't come from having more. It comes from seeing more. Look around. There is always something to thank, even now, even here. Gratitude is not about ignoring your pain. It's about learning to see beauty beside it." He paused again, then said softly, "So tonight, I invite you to do one thing before you go to sleep. Close your eyes and say thank you. Not for everything, but for something. It might be small, but say it from your heart. Because the moment you say thank you sincerely, you begin to heal." When Daniel finished, the entire hall was silent for a second. Then, suddenly, the audience rose to their feet, a standing ovation. Some people had tears in their eyes. Some were smiling deeply. The applause echoed like a wave of warmth across the hall. Daniel bowed his head humbly, his eyes glistening. He whispered again, "Thank you." In that moment, he didn't feel like a speaker or a teacher. He felt like a student of life, of love, of gratitude. After the event, dozens of people came up to him. One young woman said, "Your story reminded me to call my father tonight. I haven't spoken to him in years." Another said, "You helped me realize I can forgive myself." Daniel listened, smiled, and thought, this is the real reward. The gift was not the applause, not the fame, not the success, it was the connection. The shared humanity. The light that gratitude had passed from one heart to another. When he returned home from the trip, Daniel didn't rush back into work or recording. He took a few quiet days to rest, reflect, and simply live. He walked through the park, noticing the laughter of children, the wind in the trees, the rhythm of life continuing beautifully around him. One evening, he stood on his balcony, watching the city lights. He took out his old notebook, the one that had started everything, and turned to the very first page. It read, "Coffee that tastes good. The sound of rain. My warm bed." He smiled. So much had changed, and yet, the simple things were still enough. He turned to the last empty page and wrote, "Gratitude is not something I do anymore. It's who I am." That night, as Daniel closed his notebook, a calm voice within whispered, "This is the gift. The gift of awareness. The gift of forgiveness. The gift of being alive." He realized that gratitude had never been a lesson life forced him to learn. It was a gift life had been trying to give him all along. He just needed to slow down and open his hands. He looked up at the sky one last time and said softly, "Thank you for teaching me how to see." And somewhere, in the quiet distance of memory, he could almost hear his mother's gentle voice reply, "You finally did, my son." If you've been listening to this story today, maybe you see a part of yourself in Daniel. Maybe you, too, are learning to slow down, to see the small things again, to forgive, to breathe, to smile. Let this story remind you that gratitude is not just a word, it's a way of living. It's how we turn ordinary days into miracles and pain into wisdom. Every sunrise is a new chance to say thank you, not just with words, but with your whole being. Because when you live with gratitude, you don't just speak English with clarity, you speak life with meaning. Weeks passed after the conference, yet the warmth of that experience still lived inside Daniel. He often thought about those faces in the audience, the tears, the smiles, the spark of understanding. Something had changed, not only in him, but in the people who listened. Gratitude had started to move like a soft wind, invisible, but deeply felt. One morning, as Daniel sat at his desk, sipping his coffee, his inbox began to fill with messages again. There were hundreds of them, from different countries, in different languages. Each one was a story, small, honest, human. A young teacher from India wrote, "Your talk helped me start a gratitude circle with my students. Every morning, we share one thing we're thankful for. The classroom feels lighter now, even on hard days." A nurse from Brazil said, "I listen to your videos during my night shifts. They help me stay calm when patients are in pain. I realize gratitude can live even in hospitals." And a man from Japan wrote quietly, "I haven't spoken to my brother in 10 years. After your story, I called him. We talked for hours. We cried. I am thankful for a second chance." Daniel sat there reading, his eyes shining with emotion. He whispered softly, This is the ripple." He realized something beautiful, that gratitude grows when shared. It moves from one heart to another, from one story to the next. And the more you give it, the more it returns. Later that week, Daniel received an invitation from a school in his own city. The principal had written, "Our students have been watching your videos as English listening practice. They love your calm storytelling style and your message about gratitude. Would you visit us and share your story in person? Daniel smiled. He had spoken in front of thousands of adults, but talking to young students felt even more meaningful. After all, gratitude is a seed that grows best when planted early. When he arrived at the school, he was surprised by how lively it was. Children were running in the courtyard, laughing, waving their hands. He was guided to a large classroom where about 50 students were waiting. As Daniel entered, they clapped cheerfully. He felt a gentle wave of warmth fill the room. He began softly, "Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I'm really happy to be here today." A few students giggled, some whispered to each other, and then they grew quiet, listening. Daniel continued, "I want to tell you a secret. Gratitude is like magic. It doesn't make all your problems disappear, but it changes how you see them, and when you see differently, everything feels lighter." He looked at the class and asked, "Can anyone tell me one thing you're thankful for today?" A small girl raised her hand shyly. "I'm thankful for my cat," she said. Everyone laughed softly, and Daniel smiled. "That's a wonderful start." Then another student said, "I'm thankful for my mom's cooking." Another said, "I'm thankful for my best friend." And one boy at the back said quietly, "I'm thankful for my dad coming home last night." The class went silent for a moment. That sentence held a story, and everyone felt it. Daniel nodded gently and said, "You see, gratitude connects us, even when our stories are different." They spent the next hour writing gratitude letters to someone special. Some wrote to parents, some to friends, and one boy even wrote to his future self. When the session ended, the teacher whispered, "They've never been this quiet and focused before." Daniel smiled and said, "That's the power of reflection. Gratitude makes us listen to our hearts." That evening, Daniel walked through the park, feeling lighter than ever. He realized something: gratitude wasn't just his healing anymore. It was becoming a movement of hearts learning to slow down, to see, to feel. He sat on a bench, watching the sunset fade into gold. A thought came to him, and he took out his phone to record a voice note for his next video. Gratitude is not a word we say, it's a world we create. Every time you choose to be thankful, you change something inside you. And every time you express it, you change something around you. Gratitude travels quietly through your smile, your kindness, your forgiveness. It touches people you may never meet. That's the ripple effect. And it begins with just one word: thank you. Days later, that message became one of Daniel's most loved videos. People from all over the world began starting their own gratitude circles. Some in schools, some in workplaces, some in small villages where the internet barely reached. But somehow, his simple words had found a way there too. One group of volunteers in Kenya even sent him a short video. In it, a group of children stood in a circle, holding hands, saying, "Thank you for today," in English. Their voices were pure joy. Daniel watched it with tears in his eyes. He whispered, "They are learning English and gratitude together." He smiled because that had been his dream all along, to help people speak English through emotion, not perfection. To make language more than words, to make it alive. One evening, Daniel was invited to a radio interview about his journey. The host asked, "Daniel, after everything you've experienced, what does gratitude mean to you now?" He thought for a moment and said, "Gratitude is no longer something I practice. It's the language my heart speaks. It's how I understand the world. When you're grateful, you don't just notice beauty, you create it. You make people feel seen, heard, and valued. Gratitude isn't an action. It's an energy that keeps spreading." The host nodded and said, "That's beautiful. So you believe gratitude can change the world?" Daniel smiled and replied, "It already is. One heart at a time." After the interview, he received another letter, this one handwritten, from an elderly woman in Canada. It said, I'm 82 years old. I lost my husband 2 years ago. I was lonely, angry, and tired. Then one day, I found your video. You said, say thank you, not for everything, but for something. That night, I thanked life for giving me 50 wonderful years with him. I cried and smiled at the same time. Thank you for helping me remember joy. Daniel held the letter to his heart, overwhelmed. He realized gratitude connects generations, languages, and cultures. It's the only language that everyone understands. Months later, Fluent English Journey reached 1 million subscribers. Daniel didn't celebrate with a big party. Instead, he recorded a quiet message for his viewers. 1 million hearts connected through gratitude. That's the real achievement. You've all become storytellers of kindness. This isn't my journey anymore. It's ours. He smiled softly and added, remember, fluency isn't just speaking fast. It's speaking from the heart, with emotion, with awareness, with love. And gratitude gives your words life. That night, as he looked out of his window at the glowing city below, Daniel thought about how far the journey had come from the noisy mornings of emptiness to this peaceful evening of purpose. He whispered to the quiet world outside, every thank you is a seed, and now the garden is blooming. The wind brushed against his face as if to answer, and for a moment, he felt connected to everyone, the students, the nurse, the teacher, the grandmother, the people he would never meet, all bound by one invisible thread, gratitude. He realized the truth his mother had always known, you can't hold light, but you can pass it on. And so, with a peaceful smile, he whispered one last line before going to bed, may my gratitude keep traveling even when I'm silent. The first winter rain came quietly. Daniel sat by his window, watching raindrops trace delicate paths down the glass. It had been almost 2 years since that morning, the one when he first woke up feeling empty, lost, and tired of his own life. He smiled softly. Back then, the city outside his apartment window had looked gray and dull. Today, the same city shimmered like silver beneath the rain. Nothing outside had really changed, it was Daniel who had. He had learned to see again. His desk was still the same wooden table, the same old lamp, the same small plant that had somehow survived all these years. But the energy in the room was different. It felt alive. There were small sticky notes scattered across his wall now, each one holding a short message. Breathe. Be kind. Thank the ordinary. And in the center, a slightly faded one that read, begin again with gratitude. That was the very first note he had written on the day his journey began. Daniel leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The soft rhythm of the rain blended with his thoughts. His life had transformed, not through wealth, fame, or achievement, but through awareness. Through seeing blessings in the middle of chaos, lessons in the middle of pain. He whispered to himself, gratitude didn't change my circumstances. It changed me. Later that evening, he received a message from his childhood friend, Aaron, someone he hadn't seen in years. Aaron wrote, hey man, I've been following your journey. I'm proud of you. Funny thing, I'm going through a rough patch right now, and your videos help more than you know. I could really use a good talk. Mind meeting up sometime? Daniel felt a wave of emotion rise in his chest. Aaron had been there at the start of everything, the friend who once told him, you need a break, Daniel. You're burning out. He replied instantly, of course. Let's meet tomorrow at our old cafe. The next day, Daniel arrived early at the small corner cafe where they used to hang out after college. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air, bringing back a flood of memories, late-night laughter, endless dreams, and the quiet hope of youth. Aaron arrived soon after. He looked tired, his eyes carrying the kind of heaviness Daniel once knew too well. They hugged. It wasn't a quick, polite hug, it was the kind that says, "I missed you, I understand." They sat down, and after some silence, Aaron spoke. "I don't know what's happening, Dan. Work feels pointless. Everything's just noise. I used to love my job, but now, it's like I'm running in circles." Daniel listened, really listened, without interrupting. He remembered what it felt like to be in that same darkness. After a long pause, he said quietly, "You know, I once felt exactly like that. I thought something was missing from my life, success, excitement, maybe freedom. But what I was really missing was connection, with the present moment, with gratitude." Aaron looked at him curiously. "Gratitude? Like, saying thank you?" Daniel smiled gently. "Yes, but not just saying it, feeling it. Thanking life, even for small things. The warmth of your coffee, the roof over your head, the people who love you, even silently." Aaron stared at his cup for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You really believe that makes a difference?" Daniel looked out the window, watching people walk by in the rain, umbrellas like moving petals. He said softly, "It saved me." There was a long silence. Then Aaron smiled faintly. "You've changed, Dan. But not in the way most people do. You've become calmer, lighter." Daniel laughed softly. "Maybe that's what happens when you stop fighting life and start thanking it." After their meeting, Daniel walked through the city streets, rain dripping from his coat. Every light reflected off the wet pavement like tiny stars. He passed by places that used to hold stress and rush, the office tower, the crowded metro station, the narrow street where he used to hurry past strangers. But now each place seemed to whisper to him, "You've come home." He realized that home wasn't a location. It was a state of being. And gratitude was the key that unlocked it. That night, back in his apartment, Daniel opened an old journal, one he hadn't touched since the beginning of his journey. The first page read, "I don't know who I am anymore." He smiled sadly. Then he turned to the last page and wrote, "I still don't know everything. But now I know this, I'm alive, and that's enough to be thankful for." He closed the book and placed it gently on the shelf. It felt like closing a chapter, not with sadness, but with peace. Weeks later, Daniel decided to visit his parents for the weekend. It had been months since he'd last gone home. When he arrived, his mother was watering her plants on the porch, humming softly. "Daniel," she called, her face lighting up. He hugged her tightly. "I missed you, Mom." She smiled. "You look different. Peaceful." Daniel laughed. "I learned from the best." Inside, they sat down for tea. His father joined, cheerful as ever, and soon the house filled with stories, laughter, and the smell of fresh bread. At one point, his mother placed her hand over his and said, "I always told you, gratitude is quiet power." "You've finally felt it, haven't you?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, Mom. And now I understand, it's not about being thankful only when life is good. It's about trusting that even when life isn't, there's still something good inside it." His mother smiled, eyes glistening. "That's the secret. Gratitude doesn't make life perfect, it makes it enough." That night, Daniel stood outside in the garden, looking up at the stars. He remembered the younger version of himself who used to chase everything: recognition, perfection, meaning. And he realized that life had given him all three, but in unexpected forms. Recognition, not from the world, but from his own heart. Perfection, not in outcomes, but in presence. Meaning, not in doing more, but in being more aware. He whispered to the night sky, "Thank you for teaching me gently." The wind moved softly through the trees as if answering him. When he returned to the city the next morning, he opened his laptop and started a new script for his next video. He titled it, "Coming Home to Gratitude." He wrote, "Sometimes, the journey takes us far away into busyness, into noise, into wanting more. But sooner or later, gratitude calls us home. Home to simplicity. Home to peace. Home to ourselves. He paused for a moment, his fingers resting on the keyboard, then added one last line. And when you arrive, you'll realize everything you were searching for was already here. He sat back, letting the silence settle around him. No music, no notifications, no rush. Just the steady heartbeat of life and his quiet gratitude for it all. That evening, as the city lights began to glow, Daniel took a slow walk by the river. He noticed small moments, a couple laughing under an umbrella, a street musician playing softly, the reflection of the moon on the water. Each one felt like a quiet gift. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you, life, for everything. For the hard days that taught me strength. For the good days that taught me joy. And for the ordinary days that taught me to simply be." Then he took a deep breath, feeling a peace so full it didn't need words anymore. The journey had come full circle. He hadn't just learned gratitude, he had become it. The sun was setting softly over the city, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink. Daniel sat at his favorite spot by the riverside, the same place he had come to so many times before. But today felt different. Today, he wasn't searching for peace. He was already living in it. He watched the light ripple across the water, the breeze gently brushing his face. Children were playing nearby, their laughter echoing like music. A street musician strummed a guitar, his song simple but full of feeling. The world around Daniel was alive, beautifully, perfectly alive. He took out his small notebook, the one he always carried now, and wrote, "Gratitude is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of truly living." A few months had passed since his last meeting with Aaron. They now met regularly, sometimes to talk, sometimes to sit in silence. Aaron had begun his own gratitude journal, and every week, they shared one thing they were thankful for. One evening, Aaron said with a grin, "You know, man, I never believed writing 'I'm thankful for my morning coffee' could actually make me feel better. But it does." Daniel laughed. "It's not about the coffee, it's about noticing the coffee." Aaron nodded. Noticing. Yeah, that's the word. Gratitude helps me notice life again. They clinked their mugs together in a silent toast, two friends, grateful for both the laughter and the silence. Daniel's videos had slowly started reaching more people. He never aimed for fame, he just wanted to share stories that helped others feel less alone. Messages poured in from strangers around the world, people saying his calm voice helped them sleep, his words reminded them to slow down, his stories made them cry and heal. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Maya, a nurse from the Philippines. She wrote, "I listen to your videos after every night shift. They help me remember why I do what I do. Thank you for reminding me to be grateful for small lives I touch every day." Daniel sat for a long time after reading that. He realized that gratitude spreads like light, quietly, gently, but powerfully. When one person learns to be thankful, they pass that peace to others, not by teaching, but simply by being. One morning, Daniel received an invitation to give a talk at a community center. The theme was finding peace in everyday life. He felt nervous. He wasn't a public speaker, just a storyteller. But something inside him said, "This is part of your journey too." When the day came, the small hall was filled with people, young, old, curious faces waiting to listen. He walked up to the microphone, took a deep breath, and began. "A few years ago, I thought my life was empty. I had a job, money, comfort, but no peace. I wanted more of everything, and because of that, I appreciated nothing." He paused, letting the words settle. The room was silent. But one day, life slowed me down. It forced me to listen to the rain, to the quiet, to my own heart. And I realized I was rich already. I just hadn't learned to say thank you. He looked around at the audience. Some were smiling softly, others had tears in their eyes. Gratitude is not a magic trick. It doesn't erase pain or fix every problem. But it changes the way you see them. It turns what you have into enough. It turns ordinary moments into miracles. He smiled gently and added, "So, if today feels heavy, just start small. Say thank you for one thing. For the air you breathe. For a heartbeat that keeps going. For this moment right now." When he finished, the audience clapped softly, not with noise but with emotion. And in that quiet applause, Daniel felt something he had never felt before, a deep, humble joy that came not from being admired, but from connecting. After the talk, a young woman approached him. She looked nervous but hopeful. "Your words helped me," she said. "I've been struggling with anxiety. But when you said gratitude changes how we see pain, something clicked." Daniel smiled warmly. "I'm glad. Remember, it's not about ignoring pain. It's about seeing the beauty that still exists beside it." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Thank you." And Daniel, without thinking, replied softly, "No, thank you for listening." As she walked away, Daniel realized something profound. Every connection in life, every exchange, every shared smile was an act of gratitude. It wasn't about giving or receiving. It was about sharing presence. Months turned into another year. Daniel's life wasn't perfect, it was real. He still had long days, bad moods, worries. But he met them differently now, with kindness instead of frustration. When traffic was slow, he used the time to notice the sky. When projects failed, he focused on what he learned. When people disappointed him, he thanked them silently for showing him patience. Gratitude didn't make life easy, it made it beautifully bearable. One quiet evening, Daniel walked again to the same riverside where everything had begun. The city lights shimmered on the water like scattered fireflies. He stood still for a while, then closed his eyes. He remembered everyone who had crossed his path, his parents, his mentor Emma, his friend Aaron, the people who messaged him, even the strangers who smiled as they passed by. Each one was a thread in the fabric of his story. He whispered, "Thank you for being part of my light." Then he smiled and looked around. The world seemed to glow a little brighter, not because it had changed, but because he had. That night, he recorded one final voiceover, not for others, but for himself. He spoke slowly, softly, as if speaking to the younger Daniel who once felt lost. "If you're listening to this, I want you to know you're doing okay. You may not have everything figured out. You may still feel confused. But that's okay. Life isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to be lived gratefully, honestly, fully. Look around you. Every breath, every sound, every heartbeat is a reminder that you are alive. And that, in itself, is a miracle. Say thank you not as a habit, but as a way of seeing. Because the more you thank life, the more life gives you to be thankful for." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "Remember, gratitude is not just what you say, it's who you become. And when you live with that light, even after you're gone, it stays. It lives in others. That's the light you leave behind." When the recording ended, Daniel sat quietly in the glow of his desk lamp. He didn't feel the need to post it online. It was enough that he had spoken those words aloud to himself, to the world, to life. He turned off the light, opened the window, and let the cool night air in. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang softly. He smiled and whispered one last time, "Thank you." And so, dear listener, as you finish this story, take a moment. Look around. What can you thank right now in this very moment? The sound of your breath, the light around you, the chance to listen, to learn, to feel. Gratitude is not about having a perfect life. It's about seeing the perfection already hidden inside your imperfect days. So as you walk through life, remember Daniel's journey. Whenever you feel lost, return to gratitude. It will always bring you home.